After this video, you'll never be able to watch Turning Red the same again. On my most recent rewatch, I noticed some strange things that I never noticed. And not only did I not notice these things, but they somehow slipped under everyone's radar the last 2 years this movie's been out. I was inspired to make this video because of Turning Red's recent release into theaters for the first time. And this isn't like the usual type of Pixar theory I make, because not only is this an in-universe theory that affects the world of Pixar, but this also changes the entire message of the movie. While they want you to think that this is simply just a movie about puberty, that's actually not the case at all. The movie's pretty normal in the beginning. I guess if this is what you consider normal. We're introduced to May's friends and her school life, we meet her family, but once the Red Panda incident happens, this is when things start to get really weird. As May's being granted the panda, we see this sort of dream sequence, and within this really short sequence, there are actually a ton of images that flash by. And you really have to pause the movie to see what's going on. A ton of really creepy images are shown. But on the other side of it, we actually get to see what's going on outside of the temple. And I don't believe that these outdoor shots are actually part of the dream sequence, for the simple reason that we see a red moon in the sky, and we learn later that the red moon is the only way to get rid of the panda. So I feel like if you just put 2 and 2 together, it only makes sense that the red moon is what gave her the panda in the first place. We also see some sort of spirit breaking from the statues, and this is really important. And maybe it didn't literally break the statues because we do see them later on in the film, but in theory there was some sort of evil spirit living inside the temple that gave May these nightmares. I think the idea that this is just a genetic trait that's passed on from generation to generation is just a misunderstanding on the family's part. This is a demon that chose to bind itself to May, and this is why her parents were surprised that it happened so early. It doesn't necessarily have to be during adolescence, but that may just be the recurring trend. What is the source of all this though? Ming tells us the origin story of the panda and explains how it was granted by the Chinese gods. This to me just seems like a really incomplete explanation. So I looked really deep into this scene and found that there's a lot that Ming doesn't tell us, such as what war Sun Yi fought in or even what religion this is based on. And the biggest question of them all, why does Ming claim to not honor a god?
Instead of honoring a god, we honor our ancestors.
And not just the dudes either.
Yet admits to the fact that Sun Yi's powers were granted by the Chinese gods.
Our ancestor, Sun Yi, had a mystical connection with red pandas. She asked the gods to turn her into one.
So I had this crazy thought. What if you took the Bible and inserted it into the Pixar timeline? Would that even work? And surprisingly, it actually explains a lot of what's going on in not even just this movie, but in all Pixar movies. But for now, I'm focusing mainly on Turning Red. So I know this might confuse you at first, because don't Christians only believe in one God? And it certainly can't be the God that's referenced here, right? Well, technically yes, the Bible describes one God as the creator of all things. It also describes that the gods of other nations were fallen angels that rebelled against God and were kicked out of heaven. And soon after the creation of the world, people were divided into different nations and made to speak different languages. Each nation was assigned a god, and in certain cases multiple gods. If you're familiar with the Bible, this story is known as the Tower of Babel. These gods were evil and would tempt people to act against God the Creator. So that actually works here to explain why these Chinese gods were real and how they were able to grant such a power as the Red Panda. Like I said, May's religion isn't technically based on any real-world belief system, but I think it's safe to say that May's family is flawed in their beliefs. Ming must obviously believe that the Chinese gods exist because she says in her story that they granted Sun Yi the Red Panda, but I guess she just doesn't honor them. But I think it's out of the question that she believes in God the Creator because she says that they only worship their ancestors. But this Chinese god knows this and exploits this weakness to his advantage. Remember, this god is evil and manipulative, and is willing to do anything in order to remain living inside May. With that in mind, there are a ton of moments in this movie where the manipulation of this spirit is clear. For example, something weird that I noticed when I was rewatching the movie is that May has these random moments where she freezes up, and she really does look possessed in these moments. And that's of course because she is.
Thank you for your concern, Mother. But I'll be fine. Hey, girlfriend. What is up?
I guess the idea was just to play it off for laughs, but with the context of what's really going on in this movie, it all starts to make sense. That's not where it stops though. In fact, it gets even more apparent as the story goes on. Basically, every single time that she gets mad in the movie after the panda incident, it doesn't really seem like she's the one in control of her own actions.
I'm gonna kill him! Ow! Abby, what the heck?
Riley, stop! What is
and you can really tell in these moments that she's being manipulated. But it's during the final act of the movie that we get to see how desperate this evil spirit really is. It all starts with the ritual scene. There's a red moon in the sky, the family's all gathered around in a circle, and everything looks like it's gonna work out. That is until the evil spirit catches on. It appears almost as if May's soul is separated from her body and transported to this sort of other realm. And to people who are familiar with the Pixar theory, if you recognize this dimension, it's because it's the same dimension from the movie Soul. In both movies, this space is referred to as the Astral Realm, or Astral Plane. And the gateway to this dimension is activated the same way in both movies. A group gathers in a circle and starts playing music. However, there's one main difference between these two movies and the way that the portal's activated. In Soul, they're looking down at Earth, whereas in Turning Red, May's soul is ascending into the sky. This may not seem like an important detail, but it basically explains to us what the Astral Realm really is. This isn't some alternate dimension at all. This is a place that physically exists up in the sky, and Soul only works to further back this up, showing how Earth can be seen from this dimension. Here's where we see Sun Yi. Except, I don't believe that this is actually her, because remember, the spirit is trying to convince May not to go through with the ritual. So I actually think that this is just the spirit tricking May, because when you really think about it, Sun Yi is the one who opens up this gateway in order to show May her memories over the past few weeks to try to convince her to keep the panda. This is all just a manipulation tactic the spirit is using. You can also see at one point that it gives her this look to try to make her feel guilty, and then by this point you can tell that the spirit is just mad. And the rest of the events of this movie are heavily manipulated by the spirit. But there's something I need to clear up first. You'll notice that I keep referring to this as the spirit. But are the spirit and the Chinese god from Ming's story the same entity or separate? From what it seems, the Chinese god in essence lives inside not only May, but has control over the entire family. Or at least he did until he was locked up inside their necklaces. That's why he keeps targeting the next generation. Once Ming locked up the panda spirit, the next available option was May. But in a way, all of the jewelry that the women in May's family have contain a piece of the same spirit or Chinese god. So once the god wins over and convinces May to stop the ritual, this is when it finally finds the strength to break out of Ming's necklace. And remember what I said about this god being manipulative? His end goal is to get everyone to willingly break their necklace. And once they do that, he finally has control over their mind and is able to manipulate events the way he sees fit. The god knew that by convincing May to stop the ritual, that would make Ming mad, which would cause her in turn to break her necklace, which freed the spirit and now gives him control over Ming's mind as well. And with the god having control over both May and Ming's mind, he orchestrates the final battle. If you ever thought that May and Ming were acting way out of character in this scene, it's because at this point they have zero control over their own mind and actions. So with the god playing both sides of this battle, you know what conveniently happens at the end? Ming is taken down by May, and you can see the point where he allows May to regain control of her mind. With everything in place, he now gets all of May's aunts to willingly break their necklace, now giving him control over all their minds as well. But unfortunately for him, he didn't have control over Mr. Gao's mind, and he basically messes everything up for the spirit. I guess it's up for debate whether or not the god allowed May's aunts to get rid of their panda, because in theory, he could have just let Ming die since he has control over the actions of May's family. And you can tell that in this scene, they genuinely just wanted to save Ming. So if the god's only goal was to wreck a concert, I guess you could say he succeeded in that. Either way, by the end of the movie, the god still lives inside of May's mind, which means that he can still strike at any moment. But I guess we'll just have to wait for Turning Red 2. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching, and bye!